Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are streaming and creating today. We would also like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Flynn and here today with us once again is concept and character artist Pablo Munoz Gomez. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm good. We had a lot of fun yesterday. I'm glad to be back at it. I hope you guys caught the stream we did yesterday. If you didn't, you can catch the replay here on Behance or on YouTube. Also, you can subscribe to our YouTube APAC channel. There's so much stuff. We've done hundreds of videos over the time with people as amazing as Pablo. This is our final sort of series that we're doing in 3D. So get your questions in today. We are live. If you've got questions for Pablo, questions about the 3D design world, get them in. Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. So, Pablo, we're jumping back in. As I said, yesterday went really, really quick, right? So we're gonna get stuck into it today because we just run out of time. There's so much to talk to you about 3D and so much to share. So should we jump over to your screen? Just get into it.
Yeah. Just let's get straight into it.
Let's do it. All right, we're in. We're sharing your screen. We've got the wooden Zelda sword.
All right.
Shield of Hyrule, I think it is.
Is it the Master Sword and the
Master
Hylian?
Sword? Thank you. Oh no, I was going to lose my nerd credit. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think there's like so many different ones, and there's like variations to the design. So I don't know which one exactly it is, but just something stylized. So yeah, as a quick recap, we used 3D sampler yesterday to build one material, but I kind of like covered the basics. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what you can use this software for to create materials. I'm talking about this one right here, sampler. So just to cover one of the questions that was asked yesterday about creating stylized materials, because you totally can do that. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to create something that perhaps is like a non-destructive way of creating things. So I use sampler to essentially take one of the assets that you can find here. You can just type things like asphalt, or yeah, there we go. Yes, there you go. So this one right here, you can just drag and drop it, and it has presets, so you can select. So this is what you can see in here, kind of like concrete. And then you can add a new layer that you can just search from this called pavement. This one right here. So I'm just gonna turn it on, just to show you how easy this is. It basically takes that material and it sort of like makes the cracks to create the these stones, so these pieces of stone. But you can totally change all of that. So if you're not happy with the pattern, you can just go to the pattern and say, yeah, I don't want the brushstroke, give me flounder weave, or give me basket weave.
And this is all built in. This isn't something you've created. This is like built in. You can just use it out of the box kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. So this could be like the wall for a castle or something like that. So you can do so many things. Let me just show you. I think the European fan is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, right. So it's like an actual architectural like fan that's being created. And how does this work with like licensing and things like that? Like, I guess if it's in here out of the box, you can use it for whatever.
You can use it. As far as I know, everything that is in here, you can just create it yourself. And because you can tweak so many things, like the spacing between, like the roundness of the corner. So everything is parametric in that sense. Like you can just change all these sliders to tweak it as much as you want. So you're creating your own with the assets that are provided. But then on top of that, you can add things like moss. So just added a bit of moss just to make it a bit more organic. But you can change everything, like the spread. Like if it is very, really talking about Zelda, very overgrown. Changing the color as well. Just very self-explanatory things. So you can just make the moss look whatever you want, blue or purple if you want to. So it's very easy to change. You can also add a bit of water, and then it will, reflect that nicely. And the water itself, if I get closer here, you'll see we can change the level.
Wow.
So it uses that height map that I was talking about and the normal of the rocks to essentially spread the water and see all that muddiness and murkiness of the water. You can also change that by changing the dirt in it. So reduce the dirt. So it's more of a
we used the dirt yesterday for the grout, how it was sitting in there, but this changes the murkiness of the water because it understands.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it knows where it's placed, and it uses the edges. So you can take the wetness of the edges down so that it's like already dry, or if it just rained, for example. Everything is going to be still pretty
It's
wet.
really shiny, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
but the cool thing is that everything is with sliders. So I can go back to the pavement and just change, you know what, I want to change this back to brushstrokes. And everything updates and the settings of the other layers update. So you can create really stylized things very easy. And again, it's just a matter of clicking here to share it, send it to Painter, and there we go. So yeah, just wanted to cover this quickly. And now let's start with the fun stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, in Painter, this is pretty much what we did. There are a couple of things that I want to cover that are a bit technical, somehow technical, which is the way that the texture is projected. So right now, I did mention yesterday something about the 2D version, like the unwrap UVs.
Right.
So this that you see here on the right-hand side, that's the unwrapped version of the 3D object. So, you know, even the back of the shield, all of that, it is being unwrapped in here. So it is just essentially how the software understand whenever you paint something, how to put it in the 3D space. So it is necessary for to create something like this. Now, Painter allows you to automatically create UV. So you can just create something, for example, in 3D Modeler, which is the modeling tool for 3D, drop it in here, and Painter will figure out how to spread it in the 2D space, and then you can just start painting. But it is important to know this just because if I go back into 3D here, you'll notice that this is the wood that we created yesterday, the wood material. The projection of this material under the properties here is set to UV projection. So it's projecting that based on the UVs. But if I go ahead and change the tiling to, that's a bit too much. Let's set it to 3. And you start to see that seam.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So what I like to do with this type of materials is to set it to triplanar. So if I click on triplanar, it's going to be this box, and I will be able to just move that box around to place that, kind of like projecting it, really.
Right.
And you can use, you know, scale. At the top, you have the rotation, scale, and move.
So how high can you scale in? Like, is it like, I know it's actually, I don't know this. It's a material file, but like, if it was a JPEG, you couldn't stretch it, right? So how does that work?
So it depends on the resolution of your original image. So if your material that you created was with a 4K image, you can just pretty much scale it, you know, up to 4K. But because everything is interactive, you can see what it's doing. So if you stretch it like this, you kind of see like everything becomes a little bit blurry. Still decent quality, but it's better to just to keep an eye on that. So I cannot give you like a value, exactly a value of what to.
Yeah, it's a bit of trial and error, a bit of experience, knowing like what you can do and the size to save it and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Cool. So ultimately this wood material is purely for this inner section, and I'm going to paint it. So you won't be able to see much of the material, but it was a good example to cover how to create something a bit more complex in Sampler. So now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to work with layers and masking, as well as adding other materials directly within Painter. So let me show you. Let's go back here at the top left where the assets are. If you don't see this, you can go to Window and Toolbar, Docs, and then you'll see all of these things. But by the way, these images that I have here, that's what I plugged in yesterday into the texture set settings. All of these ones, which is important because this is the information or the maps that the software will use to know where to place some of the more automated masks that I'm going to get into. So it is important to have them in there. Right. So let me just clear this, and I'm going to go here to the first icon that has like a material, and then there's a bunch of materials that come with Painter, and you can also download them from this icon right here. So you can go to the marketplace.
And there's heaps there. When I was first playing around with it, I was surprised at how many materials there are.
Yeah, there's so many, and you can just download them and try them yourself. And all you have to do literally is just drag and drop. So if I want pure brass, just drag and drop it, and now it has brass. So it becomes more a matter of like how you blend and how you combine the material, because if you control masking, I think you control everything in 3D. So the first thing you'll notice, actually, let's remove that. I'm gonna search if I have paint. I don't think I have a paint material. Still paint. I'm gonna use this one. I'm gonna drag and drop it in here. But you don't have to, like, you could use anything. In fact, you might not have this. So it could be absolutely anything you want. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that one, and I will show you how to build it. So I'm gonna click on a new layer, a new fill layer. This icon right here is like a bucket that will create a layer and fill it with a white color. And in the properties of the layer, that's kind of like the main difference between, let's say, this and Photoshop, that Painter works with a bunch of different channels. So you have your color, your metal, your rough, so you can control all the properties independently. So let's say the color, you can go for, let's go for a bluish tint, right? And I'm trying to create like a paint that goes on top of the wood. So let's get closer here. So that's it for the color. We don't need to make it metallic, but you can if you want to. So you can just set the metallic to 1 or less. So in this case, we don't need to use that feature, that channel of the material or the layer. So at the top, you can click on metallic to turn it off, and you see it disappears. The roughness controls how shiny things are or how matte they are. So this one is a good one to kind of like find a nice in between for the paint. Maybe something like that. The normal is the one that gives you all the tiny details, but in this case, we don't have anything, so we can turn normal off. And the hide allows you to sort of like push things in and out. So it's not going to be very visible right now, but I'm going to leave it on.
All right, I've just got a quick question on this, because you got the layers, right? Go. So, and you've created this color just in Painter on top. Yep. So are they actually blending together? Like I'm imagining something like a layer blending in, like using multiply, an adjustment layer in Photoshop. Is it similar? How does that? Oh, that's kind of
it's exactly like that.
Right.
The only tricky thing to understand is that it is blending every channel independently. So that's why I added this on top, and you can still see the all the crevices from the wood that is underneath, right? Yeah. Because just to answer your question first, this drop down right here is where you can see all the multiply, overlay.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can set it to overlay, and it's going to overlay this blue color over the color of the wood. But that's the tricky bit, because right now, if you look at the layers, you have this drop down here. I'm affecting just the color. But if I go to something like the height map, which is the one that gives us all the details, it is set to linear dodge. So it is ignoring any other detail, or it's like combining the details together, which in theory is a good thing. But in this case, I want to override the details. So I can just go and replace or set it to normal, right? And you see, you lose a lot of the details. And then you can also go to the channel, the normal channel, and do the same thing. I'm gonna set it to replace. And now, if I go back to base color, the base color is still set to normal, but there are two channels, the normal and the height, that are being replaced in a way. So now you don't see the wood. So again, it depends on what you want to achieve. So in this case, let's go back to the height. I'm going to set it to linear dodge. So it's adding to it. But you can also use this slider here just to control the effect of the height map, right? It's not very visible right now. So just to keep things simple, the base color, I'm gonna set it to normal, and the rest, the height is also set to normal, or to linear dodge. So it lets you see behind or what's underneath. So all the information of the height information of the wood. All right. So what I'll show you now is that you can use one of the maps that I added. So the texture settings here, this one, the ID map, to isolate bits and pieces. So let's say that I want to only have the wood and the paint in its own masking group, right? Similar to Photoshop, you can just select both of these layers, Control G to group them together. Nothing happens right now. It's just a group that has everything. And I'm going to double click and call it wood and paint. All right. And literally we have just two layers, the wood and the paint. But then you can take the folder and create a mask for that folder. Exactly the same thing that you would do that in Photoshop. In Painter, you can just click on this icon right here, and you can create a white mask or a black mask or a bitmap mask, a mask with color selection, all of this. But this one is just to save a little bit of time, but I'll show you the manual way. You can click on black mask, and now obviously anything that is black, you won't be able to see it. And then you can, at the left-hand side, you have these brushes, or like the brush icon. In here, you also have brushes that you can choose, and you can even import things from Photoshop. So let's say if I take this Kyle's paint box, right? This is my current brush selected, and you see the icon in there. And because I have the mask selected, I'm gonna go ahead and paint. You see, I can reveal just the area, right? So this is pretty much like in Photoshop. You reveal certain areas.
Yeah.
Now, the issue here, or not the issue, but like to speed things up, is that if I don't want to affect the edge that has metal, or that I will have metal later, instead of inverting the color, right now I'm painting with black, and in the properties of this layer here at the top. So I jump between these two, but most of the time I'll just have the properties selected, because whenever I change the different layers, that's the properties really. As kind of like in Photoshop, I'll come back to this in a second, but it's the same properties, right? So you select, whatever you select, you'll see the properties in here. So it's the same thing. Whatever I select, you see the properties in here.
Yeah,
so right now
contextual
I'm in the
menu. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, once you have the mask, you can go ahead and change the color here at the bottom. So right now I'm painting with white. I can go back and then erase some bits and pieces. But there's a much better way to do this. So let me undo all of that. Do black mask again. So instead of manually painting things, which you can totally do, you can go ahead and click on this magic wand, and that's just to add effects to the mask. So you can build a very complex mask that is not depending on just whatever you paint. That's another difference with Photoshop. So I'm gonna click on, let's go ahead and click on add paint, right? So I would prefer to create these little icons or these little effects too, if I wanna paint manually, because that way allows you to control this stroke individually. So I can just lower the opacity of just this bit, and then I can create another one, continue adding my mask, and then, control this individually. So you can have a lot of control. But the reason I create one of these paint layers is because you can also go to the tools here on the left-hand side and use this polygon fill, right? And when you click on that, you'll see the polygons that our mesh has. And at the top, you have another contextual menu, basically to select triangles or polygon fills or the entire mesh or just the UV chunks. And the UV chunks are what I showed you before. 2D, let's go 2D. So these individual pieces that are being flat out, you can just select them. So if I click on this one, right now I have just a single polygon, but if I select this one, you'll see it just isolate this entire thing. So if I can come back to my 3D view, and now I can see just this color. Now there's another way of doing it. So I'm gonna remove this. I'm just showing you different ways of approaching the same thing. You can choose whatever is the easiest. So in this case, the easiest one would be to use the ID map that we connected yesterday, right? So this map right here, which has a bunch of colors. So what you can do is, again, click on the magic one and go to add color selection. So if you click on that, it's the same thing as in Photoshop going to select color, if you have multiple colors and select it. But this way you can click on pick color and it will show the ID map. So the same map that I imported yesterday. So now I can click on this one and it will be assigned. Now you'll notice that this color is very similar to this. So if I want to fix that, I'm going to add a paint layer and I'm going to use the selection tool and I'm just going to click and drag, invert it first to a black color, and that's it. So now we have isolated this mask or this piece just with this mask.
And the way you did it, it's perfect because it's based on that other layer of information that came through on the color information.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and that color information could be anything. But if you go here to the top where it says material, I'm seeing like everything combined, but you can see it individually. So you can scroll to the mesh maps those are the ones, the images that I imported yesterday, and go to ID, and then you'll see this is the ID. So you can select very quickly different colors and different pieces to assign materials and create masks like this.
Yeah.
And then just to go back to the material, you can press the letter M, very convenient for material. And that's it. So we have this layer of paint on top of the wood, but that's just very, very basic. Now we can go inside the folder, select the paint itself, and we can add a mask to the paint so that it looks a little bit more interesting. And that's when the real power of 3D Painter, comes to light. So I'm going to go ahead and actually do a mask with some of the stuff that already comes in Painter. So if I click on this masking icon here, similar to the one in Photoshop, you see I have a bunch of these black and white things, and this is just like pre-made mask that is going to use, whatever I select is going to use the mesh maps that I imported yesterday. So in other words, things like the normal, the ambient occlusion, the curvature, all of that. So let's go for something like wood. Let's type wood or edge. Let's try something interesting. I'm gonna go for these concrete edge 2, just to try this out. So I'm gonna click and drag this into this layer. So it's gonna create a mask, and you'll see, it's not doing much, but I'm gonna select the mask editor, which is the effect that was created for this mask. I'm gonna invert it by clicking on this global invert, and now you can see, and there's a little bit of things coming through, as you can see here. But then all of these can be changed. So I'm gonna go to the global balance and start playing with this, and you can see a little bit of that wood coming through. We can add a bit of contrast.
The paint. So if you wanted it to seem like the paint was kind of slowly fading off the wood, you can get that look.
Exactly. So that's the fun part. Once you establish the main materials, you can just start playing around with this. And if you don't like what this gives you, I mean, you can build it yourself, but if you don't like it, you can just remove it and then just bring in something else, maybe edge scratches. Cool. Drop it in there. And this one comes with a metal edge wear as well as the sharpen. So I'm going to select the metal edge wear and I'm going to invert it again. And we can change this a bit. Add a bit of grunge amount. Scale. So yeah, it depends on what you wanted to achieve, but maybe this is not the best one. I'm going to go back to the one I use. Let's go for, what was the one that I use? Let's use this one, just try something else.
Cool. We do have a question as well. Is it possible to 3D print after creating this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 3D print won't come with the textures, but the actual mesh will. So yeah, you can just export the 3D mesh for 3D printing.
Cool. There we go.
All right, so I'm just gonna move a little bit faster now. Let me just change the scale of this because I'm gonna increase the contrast in here. So let's say that these are the areas that I wanna get some paint, kind of like scratching here. But if I go closer, you see there is not much difference, and I can add a little bit of depth to the paint. So if I go back to the layer that has the properties of the layer, the blue layer, remember that I mentioned I was gonna leave the hide enable. I can use this to essentially push this in or out. So I'm gonna make this very, very subtle.
Oh, so you're saying that it was flat because they had the same kind of property, like there was no depth to the paint. It was
exactly
right.
And then you can do this with, it could be a lot more complex than this, but now the layer or the paint layer has a 0.01 value in the height, so it's like slightly higher than the wood itself, which doesn't have that. So you can change all of that as well. But let's say that you want to keep adding things to this mask. Let's say some scratches that, some wear and tear, basically. You can also go to that mask that you created, right? And you can go to the magic one, and I'm going to go and click on fill. So fill is just going to fill it with a gray color. So you see the mask itself is now gray. And just like in Photoshop, you can press the Alt key to click on the mask and visualize what it's doing, or the mask itself. You can also press the Shift key and hide the mask. So you can toggle it on and off, similar to Photoshop. So all of that is the same. So in this fill layer, it's kind of like a fill effect within the layer. And that means that you can apply any black and white image. So if I go to this icon right here that has a bunch of 2D image and generators that are 2D, noise and stuff, we can type scratch. So this one right here. So I'm going to use these grunge scratches, which is just a black and white image that is procedurally generated. So I can click and drag that into the properties of the fill. So now if I hold the Alt key.
Sorry, it's procedurally generated. Does that mean it's different each time? So it's...
No, it means that you can procedurally change some of the settings and the parameters to tweak it and
it's not
customize
like a
it.
flat JPEG that you've put in and put over.
Yeah.
It's you can actually change the dynamics.
That's right. Yeah. But you can also build it yourself. You can create a tileable texture with scratches in Photoshop, black and white, drop it in here as a texture, and then bring it in. But the cool thing about this one is that you see that I have the grunge map selected now, which is in the fill layer, and then all of these parameters can be changed. So I can change the balance, right? The contrast, the quantity of scratches, so I can reduce all of that. Maybe I can tile things here, like so. And then I will see, this is currently what the mask is doing, but you see that is kind of like overriding the other mask. This is the first mask, right? Or the first layer of the mask. This one is going to override it. So what you can do is use the blending modes of the mask itself. So you can click on multiply, so it will multiply the previous one, or you can do overlay, and it's going to combine the two. So you can play around with this. Probably linear dodge might be good. Let's try this one. I'm also going to invert it. There we go. So I just multiplied it and invert the mask, and you see the scratches coming through, and the scratches are only in one layer, right? So now I can, play around with the thickness, the quantity, the contrast again, the balance, so I can see more or less of the scratches. But little by little, you start to build a more complex material. I suppose that's the whole point, the whole idea.
Right.
And that's all within the layers, and it's non-destructive. So you can just go to the layer that has the paint and say, you know what, I want this to be green, or I want this to be whatever color you want. And then the masking and all of that remains the same. So,
wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you're talking about being non-destructive, and it's something we talk about quite a lot. Like, it seems like you can just go back in and change your mind at any point. Just jump back in and play with the sliders, add scratches, take something away. Yeah,
that's pretty much it. That's why I like working with in this way. So I don't literally create a layer and start painting, which you can just to show you. You can click on this button right here, and that will create a paint layer. It's a very simple layer like in Photoshop, and then you can use any brush that you want. I'm gonna select this brush that comes from Photoshop as well, and you have the properties or the ability to change things in the properties of that layer. So the color, let's go for a red color, so that is pretty obvious. Maybe you want it to be metallic, and then the roughness, something like that, right? Yeah. And maybe a little bit of height so that it adds volume. So in this layer, I'm gonna start doing this, and you see I'm painting like strokes of paint, of metallic paint that has also some height information.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's because it looks thick, because I guess metallic paint would be quite thick.
Yeah, exactly. So you can do whatever, right? The only problem with this is that you cannot change it. So once you've painted it, if I change this to a blue color, you already painted, it's not changing anything. So I can just paint now with blue, and then I have to change with green. And then I said, right, let's reduce the metallic and do something else. So that's why I prefer to do it non-destructively, because then I could change all of this. And the way of doing that is really easy. You can just, let's delete that. And instead of using a paintbrush or a paint layer, you click on a fill layer, create a mask, right? And then you can add the paint. So now you select the layer, like the fill layer that has, a red color. Then you go to the mask, and the mask has a paint property. So you can paint just like I did before. So I can do that. And then I can control the information of the height, the roughness, the metallic, all from the layer itself, and then change the color whenever I want to. And if I don't want to have this, I can just go back to the mask, delete it, and then use a new paint with a different value. So it is much better, in my opinion, to work like this, because you can come back, like I said, you save the project and come back and just fix it. So it saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move a little bit faster now. I want to do kind of like a comparison with Photoshop, so that anyone that is more familiar with that tool, you kind of like see how you can start building things a bit more complex. And that's what we're going to be doing for the metallic material all around here, and for the sword as well.
Okay, cool. Keen.
So
just a shout out as well to chat if you do have any questions. We've had a few questions, but if you have any questions as we're going along, don't hesitate to throw them in chat. I'll ask them.
Yep, for
we'll
sure.
ask Pablo, and we'll have a chat.
Yeah, let's cover some questions just after this one and see how we go. So what I was gonna say with what we just did with the paint, right? So imagine that you have your wood material. This is just one of the albedo color that we exported yesterday from the wood, and then you have let's say the mask or the area that you want to cover with the wood. So in Photoshop, you can do a couple of things, or you can do a few things, but a couple of things would be to put this layer on top and then just clip it to that, and that's it. The other way would be to hold Control and click on that shape and then create a mask for whatever material or whatever layer you want. So I'm clicking on that. So now I have this material. That's pretty much what we've done with the folder. And then you have this bit as well. Actually, for the folder, let me undo that just to make it a bit more clearer. So I'm going to select two layers, Control G to create a group, right? And then I want to hold Control and click on this shape, and I'm going to create the mask for the group. There we go. So now it's a little easier. So this is what we had in Painter. So we have the material that has the wood, and then we have the paint material, and we can just set this to multiply maybe, or let's just leave it at normal and reduce the opacity slightly. And the same thing, you can create a layer here, and then maybe invert that layer, and then use any brush. I'm using the same brush that I use in Painter to reveal or mask things out like so. But that's it. You paint that mask directly. So there's no that level of control that you get with building the mask with other attributes. So that's kind of like what we did. But you see, if I want to change something, I can still change the color. In that way, it's not destructive, right? And I can go back to the mask and then refine it a little bit, invert. So in that sense, it's not destructive, but you have a lot more control in Painter, as well as having access to different channels. You can control metallic and all of that. Anyway, so the way that you build complex materials in Painter is the same thing, just layering things up. So this is an example of how you can do this in Painter, but in Photoshop. So you start with a fill layer, a gray layer, then you can add another darker layer, and that darker layer has a mask that looks like this. So you can just paint kind of like a concrete type of thing, and that way you just let through that darker gray. Then you have another one with a lighter gray, slightly different mask, and then another one that has the scratches as well. So all together combined, these are different values of the same kind of like color, the same gray. It's just about how you mask those layers to create something a bit more complex. So I'm going to show you how to do that in Painter now. But if there's any questions, like I said, before I jump into that more advanced way of creating materials. We've
had two questions. So Vicky asks, how long would it take you to learn this software?
Painter. I don't think it will take too long. It depends. All right, that's a good question actually. So if you're familiar with like 3D concepts, it will be pretty easy because it has very familiar stuff. If you've never touched 3D, I would say like learning the terminology and things that are related to the 3D environment is kind of like the priority. But once you know things like what UV mapping is, or normal maps, projection, baking, all of that stuff that might be a little bit scary. If you cover all of that, then jumping into something like this, a software like that, would be really, really easy. I would say, in a week you can pick it up if you know the basic concepts. Yeah.
Right. Cool. That's a great answer. And our other question is, what made you pick up creating in 3D in the first place?
In general, like creating stuff in 3D?
Yeah, what brought you into creating things in 3D?
It's a good question.
I'm trying to make it a short answer.
Yeah, the short answer is like when I was in high school, that was like a very new thing to me, and I was really I have been always fascinated with motion and animation in general. So when I was in high school, I think I saw Blender, or like one of those old tutorials for Blender. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I started like looking into it, and then I realized that it could be a career. I didn't know that you could actually make a living out of like 3D stuff. I thought it was just like a gimmicky thing. So I started looking into it, and I was fascinated by like what you could do. And at the time, like I remember that creating something like an ambient occlusion, which is something that you can do very easily right now. It took like, when I studied it took about like a month or something. So it was like a whole class on how to create ambient occlusion. So things have come a long way.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was like the novelty which really attracted me. And I've always done things in creative space. It's just that 3D allowed me to be a bit more creative, I think. And the digital aspect of it really attracted me as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the short answer.
Cool. That's great. Good questions. There we go. We're back.
All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is click on fill layer. There we go. So this the same gray layer, and I'm going to start building a metallic material. Let's concentrate the view here on the blade. And I'm going to go ahead and hold Control and G to put it into a folder. And you can also right click and give it different colors just so that you know what you're doing. So let's say actually, let's make it blue. So we know that that's the wood and the paint. And yeah, let's leave this one green, yellow. All right, so this one is going to be the base, and the base is going to be kind of like a gray color. And the roughness and all of that, I'm going to leave everything as it is. It's just a simple layer with a simple color. And what I'll do is in the effects panel on this magic one, I'm going to click on filter. And if you see, there's nothing right now. It's an empty filter. But in the properties, you can click on filter, and there's a bunch of things that you can get. So these are different filters that it's the same as, let's say, hue saturation value or levels or things that you can add in Photoshop in a non-destructive way. So it's the same thing as clicking in here and say, all right, give me a color lookup, and then just import one of these ones to change it.
I love color lookups. So it's basically a filter.
That's exactly right. It's a filter. So you can click on filter and then choose what filter you want to use. And they're obviously more specific for 3D. So I'm going to go for, can't remember the name, so scroll down. So any of these ones right here. So you see, these are like matte finish. So let me just hover over. There's like different matte finishes. This matte finish rough. So if I click on that, you'll see that now I have some roughness and those like nice stains that make the metal look a little bit older. But if it's in the layer itself, so I can just turn it on and off, right? And in the layer, I set the metallic to 0. So I want this to be metallic. So I'm going to make it 100% metallic. And now you can see a bit more.
It's amazing. Looks so good.
Yeah, it's like those like subtleties. If I just turn off the matte finish, it is a metallic object, but there's no variation in the roughness. So it's very clean. And this is not meant to be clean. So I'm going to click on that. And you'll see now we have nice. By the way, I'm holding Shift and right click every now and again. I do this all the time just to change the position of the environment and the light, just to check that everything is looking cool.
Right.
So yeah, this is the first layer, and we already have some nice variation in the roughness. But let's say that you want to variate the color, right? You want to be able to have slight variation on the grays. So you can click on a new layer. Same thing, make it full metallic, or you can just duplicate the layer. Actually, this time I'm gonna make it red so that you can see the difference. And then click on the mask. I'm gonna create a black mask, and I'm going to go ahead and click on add fill to the mask. And that is the same thing in Photoshop as, going into your mask and then pasting a black and white image, or literally painting a black and white image, right? So the fill layer allows you to do that. Let's go back here to the libraries where I have these textures, and let's type grunge. All of these, by the way, come with Painter as well. So I have a few custom things that I built myself and that I've downloaded, but most of these come with Painter. So I'm going to use this dirt muddy thing. So I'm going to place it in there. And as soon as I do that, you can see what the mask is doing. So if you want to see the mask again, just press Alt and see, what it's doing. But now within these properties, or within the properties of this fill, you can change the balance, right? And just make it a bit more contrasty, like so. And then press M to go back to the material. So, this could be something like to showcase after the battle. It's just full of blood or something.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously, we're gonna keep it nice. So I'm gonna change the red color and go for a darker gray, or maybe like a lighter tone. So you see, as I do that in real time, I can see what it's doing.
And that's something that's kind of blowing me blow me away a little bit is just how like you can see everything happening as you're doing it. Like I would have thought that you would sort of need to either be rendering or waiting, or like it's so quick to make the changes and make the adjustments. Like it's literally just happening like as you're going.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things, right? Like it's just reacting right now to light, and I don't even have the shadow. So you can click on the viewer here on display settings, and you can scroll down a bit to where it says, sorry, at the top where it says shadows. You can enable shadows, and then that way you have actual shadows showing on the model
from the light. So as you're changing that, it's
HDR.
casting a shadow down, right?
Yeah.
And I guess you have that turned off so that you can see the detail of the crevices as you're going. Yeah.
See here at the top. I should have covered this, but in the environment opacity, you can just turn this on and then turn off the blurriness as well. So you can see this is the environment in 3D, but you can change the environment. So from panorama, you can go for this other thing. So obviously the lighting changes, but you get the shadows as well.
So that basically is showing you the 3D environment that if it was in this 3D environment, based on the light and everything that's around it, this is what it would look like. That's right. That's how the material that you're creating is reacting to the environment. So I like to work with like plain things. So there is this one called I think it's this one. This glaze. No, not this one. This one. This studio. I like to work with this one because it's just a pretty, black and white image of a studio, and that way I can see the real value of things like the color. But sometimes it's cool to just select something like this and see how it would look in a desert, like of the Star Wars desert or something like that. Oh yeah. Hey, I've just got a quick question, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Don't want to slow down too much, but so we have a question from Ryan over on YouTube. Thanks for the question, Ryan. Is there a general rule of thumb for when to make folders and how the types affect the layers within? So I think you might mean the adjustment. I don't know if it is type or adjustment layer there. Does that question make sense? Are you able to answer that?
Yeah, totally. I think so. I think that I got it. So
cool.
So the folders, if I collapse this, you can see that it has this blending as well for the entire folder. The rule of thumb for me is that I try to keep as many folders as I can, and I sometimes have folders within folders within folders just to organize things.
Right.
And my rule of thumb is just to always put folders in a pass-through. So pass-through is going to allow all the layers, the properties of the layers to pass through. So that's the only rule of thumb that I would say it's important. But yeah, to be honest, folder is just a way to simplify the organization of stuff. Because if you don't have folders, for example, for this, if I hide these, if I hide the mask, now I'm applying this paint layer and this wood to everything. So I would have to create a mask for what I want for each one of the layers. Whereas if I just create a general mask for the area that I want, it's a lot easier, and that's with folders. Hopefully that answers the question.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like it. Great. Thanks for the question, Ryan.
No worries. Alrighty. So let's make this even more interesting and add. The model that I created, I sculpted some scratches like this, but we can do a little bit more and really heavy set of scratches. So that's also to show you that you can create layers that control just the height map and the roughness, no color. So I'm gonna click on a new fill layer, and I'm gonna make it. I tend to do this quite often. Just make it a very bright color so that I can see what it's doing. Then go to the mask, go to black mask, then let's go to add fill. And in here, let's go and find some scratches. So scratch, I'm gonna use the same one because we've used that. So I'm gonna click on that, drag it in. So now you can see the scratches in here, and we can play around with the tiling, the scratches. We can change the width of the scratches, the length as well, maybe smaller. Add a bit of dirtiness as well, or remove that. So you can play. This is what is. I can spend hours here just like tweaking things,
just changing it, tweaking it, going back.
Exactly.
Yeah, different.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
All right. So let's say that you're happy with these ones, right? You can press the Alt key to visualize the actual mask. And now what I'll do is I'm going to turn off the color. I don't want to have any color information. I'm going to toggle the metallic. So if I toggle metallic off, it's going to use the metallic information below the layers, right? So we already have this piece as a metallic, so that's fine. This one is also metallic, so it's all good. So yeah, this one, I'm going to use the roughness to increase or reduce the roughness. So every scratch would be, like if you have a metallic piece and then you scratch it, you will reveal a pretty clean version of the metal. So I'm going to reduce that. And with the height map, if I go closer to maybe this, yeah, here we go. So here's a scratch. I'm going to take that height. I'm going to push it back a bit to minus 0.1. So now we have these cool scratches that are in there, non-destructive. If we want to go back, we just need to tweak the masking and say, give me less or more. So it's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could just spend all day doing it, right? Like,
pretty much.
It'd be hard to. Do you ever limit yourself to the amount of time you're allowed to do something? Probably not at this stage in your career. You probably get a good feel for when something's done or not. But is it? Do you find that sometimes you're like, I'm spending way too much time on this very specific detail. I actually have a deadline. I've got to get
all
this
the
out.
time,
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like the good thing about this is that you can save these as smart materials, which is something that I haven't covered. I mean, how are we doing with time? We still have
we've got about 10 minutes left.
Ooh, all right. We need to cover the. All right, let's do this really quickly. But basically, now that I have this folder, I'm going to go ahead and click on black mask with a color selection. So that is the automated process of creating a mask and then adding a color selection from the filters. This one right here. So I'm going to select the blade and I'm going to select another one. I'm going to select this part here and all of these bolts. So anything that has that sort of metallic color, I want to add, or the metallic material, I'm going to add that. These other ones are slightly different. Oops. I think hang on. This green one? Oh, yeah, I picked the wrong one. There we go. All right, so all of these pieces are metallic. These pieces as well are metallic, but I'm going to show you with a different material. So let's say that we're happy with that. I'm also going to add a paint color and I'm just going to fill this one just so that you can see it. All right. So now we have masked this folder for all the metallic pieces. And these other pieces, I'm going to use a smart material. So this one right here, this smart material are essentially folders that you have already established the way that masking works. And then you can save the entire folder as a material, smart material. So I'm going to go for paint.
Okay. Cool. I'm with you.
And then you have this nice steel paint, right? If I just drop it in here, it might take a while, but you'll see it just loads a bunch of filters and layers with custom masking. But what it does is a little bit of paint that is revealing as well some metallic pieces underneath or metallic material underneath. And all of these scratches can be tweaked. So if you look at the paint mask, you can go to the mask editor and then just change it. So you can just maybe with the contrast as well. So you can change the contrast, change the balance of how much scratches in the edges are happening. So something like this is nice. Let's go ahead and take the entire folder, click on a black mask, and I'm going to use the same technique. So color picker, I'm going to pick this layer right here, and that's it for that. And now I can go into the paint. So we have metallic in there, and I'm going to the paint, and I'm going to go. You can also use the eyedropper here to select a similar color to what we've done before, like so. And again, because it is non-destructive, if imagine that this is a set of folders or a set of layers that you saved, you can come back and see, change things like, okay, this color is fine, but I'm going to make it metallic. So the paint is metallic and the roughness is a bit more shiny. And if you want to reduce the amount of all this bumpiness in that layer, that is coming through these fill layers, I think. So you can just reduce that. Or another way of doing it is going to the hide information of the layer and then just reduce it as well here. So multiple ways of going through it. So I'm just rushing through it a little bit, but let's go ahead and finish this up so that we can render it. So I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to click on gold. This pure gold, I'm going to drop it in here. I'm going to change the color to something a bit brighter so it's more stylized. Same thing, black mask. And I'm going to click on selection. I'm going to select this color and also this one right here so that we have gold in this area. I have also created a custom material that is called quick strings. So I'll show you what that is.
Right.
So I'm going to drop that in here.
Quick strings.
Yeah, or like strings or rope effect.
Yeah.
So you see, it has that sort of effect. So I'm going to apply it to this one. Same idea. Let's add a color picker or color selection. There we go. So now it is added in there.
So fast to make that, like add it in the way because the way you built it with the kind of crazy Christmas colors. You just see color picker, grab it, and then it's excellent.
And this folder, this is a smart material that I created. So it has, I can toggle all the layers and show you. So this is the base layer. Then the next layer gives me those rope things, which is just a mask using this image that comes with Painter. So it's a bunch of stripes. Then this is adding a little bit of, that ropey fabrics. Fabrics, and then adding a bit of dirt, and then also a bit of dust as well. So it's just a simple material, but then you can, once you build your library, you can just drag and drop really easily. I'm going to do one more just to finalize it. So metal, and let's select something like grinded copper. I'm going to drop it in there. And let's go ahead and use another black mask. Color selection, and I'm gonna pick this color right here. So now we have that, and we can go to the actual layer. And in this case, you don't have like any way to pick a color. So what you can do is create a filter for the layer and select the HSL, which is the hue saturation levels or lightness, and then just change this to more of a red color, more saturated, a bit darker. So the hue saturation that you'll find in Photoshop. All right, so that was pretty quick. Let's just wrap it up with a render. Hopefully we have time.
We've got about 3 minutes left. We'll see how we go.
All right, so let's just render it out. I mean, you can add more things, but the render is pretty simple. I'm gonna go ahead and click on File, and I'm gonna say send to, you can send it to Photoshop, but I'm gonna send it to Substance 3D Stager. So I'm gonna click on that, and it's gonna send everything that you've done, all the materials, all the, everything basically. Is going to compile it into a set of materials, open up Stager, which is what it's doing right now. It's opening up the 3D rendering application. And I'm going to say include on, I'm going to keep it like this. Don't show this again. So just the generic stuff. There we go. So now we have this. I'm going to scale this up. And the way that you rotate and move around is the same thing as in Painter. Holding Shift and right-click to move the environment. And this is an actual render. And I can click on Ray Tracing, and that's going to give me a high-quality render.
Right,
so
like as you're previewing it.
So this is the actual render. This is the actual quality. As you see, if I move around, it's very noisy. But when I let go, it gives you the right...
see the detail, yeah.
The right detail. But this is a fantastic software to use. It works in very similar ways. So on the left-hand side, you have the assets. You can click on the lights. You can drop a different environment, maybe something a bit more crazy like this Studio 80s horror, and then see the effect of all that metal and all that work that you did in the texture.
If you had like neon lights or something happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. I'm going to use this warm key and fill. That's something that it looks pretty nice with this sort of metallic stuff, and rotate things around just to do a render. And maybe you can do, you can create another light. So here at the top, you have this type of light. So I'm going to click on an area light and just drop it in here. And you see sort of like snaps to the angles of the polygons. So I'm going to drop it in there. And now we have this kind of like like a key light, really, which you can go to the properties and change all of that. But yeah, to wrap it up, this is basically, if you're happy with this, you can click on Give me a new camera, set the framing of that camera. You can set the depth of field, so enable that. Set the focal point to be this one, and then you can change the blurriness amount, which is the depth of field. So yeah, once you're happy with this, all you have to do is go to the render tab and make sure that everything looks fine in terms of the samples. You can go for 124, so it's a bit, the quality is a bit better.
Yep.
124. Select the cameras that you want to render. You have multiple cameras. Choose Zelda, Shield, and Sword.
We won't actually press render because we're completely out of time.
All right.
But that's the button that you would press.
That's
Thank
the button.
you.
It's very, very quick, and you get something like this. That's it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't want to get cut off. I want to make sure we have time to say thank you, Pablo. It's amazing. I'm just sitting in awe. I just want to keep watching you create stuff in the 3D environment. It's great. Excellent. There's been some wonderful comments as well from everyone else that was watching. Thank you so much for the questions, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back. Adobe Live is back. Is on every Tuesday and Wednesday. Pablo, again, thank you so much for hanging out. We got to get you back on. There's so much to talk about.
Yes, I know. No worries. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks for the questions as well.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the week. See you later.
See ya.